This is what happens when you break one of your own rules. I'd lived out west for a long time, but I always made it my policy to never drive outside of town in the wintertime. Unfortunately, I had to attend a meeting in Saskatoon, and as there is no longer any bus service from Regina, I had to drive it there and back. It was no use complaining to the people I worked with. Most of them had lived out here all their lives and grew up gunning pickup trucks through howling blizzards. But I'm from the sunny south, and I didn't like driving on snow and ice. Regina to Saskatoon, it's not a bad drive, in nice weather. And now that they've raised the speed limit, you can do it in under 3 hours. But winter is different. Out here, there can be clear blue skies, and in less than half an hour, a raging snowstorm with whiteout conditions. And there's nothing, no towns, nothing but wide open empty space, farmland between the two cities. Still, I had been voluntold, so I had no choice. I had to go. I drove up very early in the morning with the rising sun, and everything was fine. The roads were clear and traffic was light. I could have stayed overnight, but when the meeting ended at 5 p.m., I figured I'd just go. After all, everything was fine on the run up. I'd be home by 8 o'clock, so why not go while the getting was good? Big mistake. Big mistake. I was only 20 minutes south of the city when I began to notice how dark it was. Once you left the city, there were no light standards, no lighting along the highway. The only lights you had were your headlights and the lights from the other vehicles. And dusk was falling. And where were those other vehicles anyway? I seemed to have the road all to myself. The night was closing in, and while the day had been bright, a ceiling of thick gray cloud was closing in and shutting out what little light there was. I continued my solitary journey as the world around me got darker and darker, and then, up ahead, a mile or two away, I saw a bank of grayish-white mist covering the highway. Fog? No, a snow squall. I drifted into the snow shower, which was light at first, just granulated specks of white, gently tapping on the windshield. But as I continued down the highway, the flakes became bigger, thicker, heavier, and quickly began to obscure my vision. I instinctively slowed down as the snow began to pile up on the hood of my car. The windshield wipers were moving back and forth at top speed, but I could see they were fighting a losing battle. Everything went white. The road, the sky, everything I could see. And I no longer knew if I was on the road or not. Total whiteout. I had slowed to a dead crawl, and I hoped that no one would come speeding up behind me. I did not fancy getting rear-ended by a transport truck. I couldn't see any other vehicles, either on my side of the road or on the other side heading north. But then I could see nothing but snow. And then the darkness took control. All I could see was a cascade of falling snow, illuminated by my high beams. And then I got stuck. I tried to reverse, but only succeeded in spinning my tires. I couldn't believe how much snow had fallen and how quickly it had fallen. It was like the old-fashioned blizzards the seniors talked about, with drifts 10 feet high. And here I was, trapped in such a blizzard, out on the frozen prairie. I shut the ignition off. I had to conserve fuel, so I could keep running the heater when the cold got too intense. I had an emergency kit and a spare blanket in the trunk, so I exited the vehicle to get them. I was only going to the trunk. I knew my safest bet was to stay with the car and not get lost in the snow. Besides, there was no place to go. I was in the middle of nowhere. But I was blinded the instant I exited the vehicle, and I grabbed onto the side of the car to steady myself and for orientation. The snow was coming down so hard I couldn't see. I clung frantically to the vehicle, for I instinctively knew that if I lost contact with it, I might not find it again. I worked my way around to the trunk, only to find it buried under 6 inches of snow. 6 inches already? I brushed it off the best I could, but I had trouble finding the lock. My car is white, same as the snow, and my hands were shaking from the sudden cold. The temperature had dropped precipitously, and the wind had risen. I finally got the key in the lock and turned it. Nothing happened. The trunk was frozen shut. I fought with it for several minutes, until I couldn't stand the chill, then groped my way back to the driver's side door before it froze too. I ran the heater as soon as I got back inside. I was covered in white, like a snowman. After a few minutes, I began to feel human again, and knew I was just going to have to wait it out. For the next few hours, I ran the heater over and over, just enough to keep from freezing. I tried not to fall asleep. I wasn't sure I would wake up alive. But in the end, I slept and had strange dreams. I dreamed I was walking through a primordial forest. A light crust of snow covered the ground, and dusk was falling. Ahead of me, in the twilight, I could hear the roar of the wind and the sound of crashing trees. The ground shook beneath my feet, and my nostrils were assailed by a terrible stench, the fetid odor of rotting meat or rotting flesh. Something was coming for me, something which pushed the trees aside, something huge, gray, bellowing. A squall of snow, a flash of light, a sudden sharp pain in my chest. I woke up. The blizzard was over, and a bright full moon illuminated a winter wonderland landscape. Drifts of pure white snow as far as the eye could see. It was beautiful in a bleak, austere way. I tried the ignition. The engine was dead. I would just have to hang on until I was rescued and hope I didn't freeze to death. Something Something dark was wading through the snow towards me. A man? Someone coming to rescue me? But who could possibly be out there in these conditions, walking? I looked closer, and while it was humanoid in appearance, it wasn't human, although it might have been once. It stood 8 or 9 feet tall, the body thin and emaciated, starved. It had been covered in clothes once, but now its garments hung in tatters from the skeletal frame. Its skin was gray, its fingers elongated into jagged claws, and its feet, huge, swollen, round, like the feet of an elephant. But its face, what was left of the face, is what arrested my attention. It was half eaten away, the mouth a rictus of yellowish fangs, and the eyes, wide, staring and glowing red. I knew what it was. A Wendigo, a person who had once tasted human flesh and been transformed into a bloodthirsty cryptid, who preyed upon and feasted upon those lost in the wilderness, and who could summon blizzards to trap the unwary. It strode up to my driver's side window and looked in, its hideous countenance inches from mine, and it said, not out loud, but in my mind, "Let me in. No, let me in, Clark. No, Clark." I opened the door. The local news talk radio reported the discovery of the frozen body of Clark MacDonald, 53, lying beside his stalled vehicle in a snowdrift on Highway 11 south of Kenaston. What they didn't report is that his heart had been ripped from his body. There seemed to be a lot more snowmen around this year, more than usual, and they appear to be able to move. I know. It sounds crazy, but we've had a lot more snow than usual so far this winter. So much for global warming. After an especially big dump of the white stuff a few weeks back, I noticed the local kids had been busy making snowmen. Or at least snow people. PC, you know. At first, I thought it was charming, and it made me smile. But then, I happened to admire one particular snowman in front of a yellow house down near the end of the street. He was around 5 feet in height and had a top hat, a red scarf, a carrot nose, and 2 broken branches for arms. He, or it, even had stone eyes and a smile made from pebbles. An older couple lived in the house, so the snowman was probably the work of their grandchildren. Nice. It was nice. But then it moved. The snowman or snow person moved. I had gotten into the habit of looking for the snowman when I headed down the street. But one day, I saw it was no longer in front of the yellow house. It was in front of the gray stone house next door. I gave my head a shake. I was sure it had been in front of the yellow house. But snowmen can't move. I must have been mistaken. No big deal. Until the next time I went down the street and saw the snowman was now in front of the blue house. The blue house on the other side of the road. On the other side of the road. This time, there was no mistake. The snowman had moved. But snowmen can't move. Of course, I didn't jump to conclusions, but rationalized the situation. Somebody simply made a different snowman in front of the blue house. Maybe the snowman in front of the yellow house, I mean the stone house, had fallen down, and they'd used the topper and the red scarf and the branches when making a new snowman. Maybe it was the same kids who had created both snow people. After all, snowmen can't move, right? Right? I would have continued to ignore what I was seeing, but for the snow family in the field behind the house. I was looking through my dining room window when I first noticed them. A snow family. Mom, Dad, and kid, just off to the right of the tree, directly in front of my line of sight. Isn't that cute? I saw them every time I sat down, and they always made me smile. Until the day I looked up and found them standing to the left of the tree. The left. But they had been on the right, not the left. Was I losing my mind? Did I need new glasses? Or was it a case of just not paying attention? I tried to forget about it. After all, it wasn't that big a deal. But the next time I went down the street, I made a point to look for the snowman with the top hat, which was now back in its original position in front of the yellow house. And when I returned home, I found the snow family were back standing at the right of the tree. Was I going mad? I could have sworn. I got hold of a small notebook and wrote down the exact position of the snow family, complete with a little drawing of them, and I also noted the date and time. Then I went for a walk around the neighborhood, notebook in tow, and I wrote a short description of every snowman I encountered, sometimes with a drawing and noting the time and the address. The next day, I repeated my walk, notebook in hand. Half of the snowmen had moved. Half! The snowman with the top hat was now in front of the blue house again. But the most egregious example was a very distinct upside-down snowman, topped by a pair of upside-down gumboots. It had not only changed houses, it had gone around the corner, actually changing streets. Didn't anybody else notice? Anybody at all? My God! I staggered back home and poured myself 2 fingers of Jack. I slumped down into my dining room chair and spit whiskey all over the tablecloth. The snow family was no longer to the right or the left of the tree in the field behind my house. They were in the backyard. My backyard! How did they get in the backyard? Snowmen can't... Oh, never mind. I took another drink, and then I knew what I had to do. I went to the garage for a shovel. Not a snow shovel, but the hard, pointed spade I used for digging into the ground. I walked over to the Snow family, raised the shovel above my head, and hesitated. I was about to commit murder. At least it felt like murder. I mean, to use a shovel to smash and decapitate a snowman? It was almost like smashing and decapitating a human being. I hesitated, then slammed the blade of the shovel into the snowman. The dad. It was easier to attack the biggest target. And then I slammed it down again and again on the mom, on the kid, until there was nothing left of them but a pile of beaten down snow and broken twigs. I was filled with bloodlust. Or was it snowlust? I briefly thought about destroying some of the other snowmen on the street, especially the one with the top hat. But someone would call the police on me, and how could I explain it? Instead, I went back inside. I think I may have had a few more drinks then. In any event, I went and lay down, and when I woke up, the darkness had taken control. I staggered into the living room, looked out the window, and nearly went into cardiac arrest. The snowman with the top hat was standing in the middle of my front lawn. It was no longer facing the street, but was looking directly into the window, directly at me. Its pebbled mouth was no longer curled into a smile, but was a straight line curled down at the edges. It was frowning at me. "I'll fix you," I said to myself. Actually, I think I said it out loud. Talking to a snowman. I went to the garage for the shovel. The murder shovel. And then... The following item appeared on the local news talk radio. The RPS is investigating the death of a local man who was apparently decapitated by a shovel. Police were called after a number of witnesses reported seeing the head of a man atop the body of a snow person on the front lawn of a home in South Regina. What witnesses first thought was a red scarf was actually blood which had stained the front of the snow person. The headless body of Harvey Ingalls, 53, was found lying on the blood-soaked floor of his garage, next to a spade shovel which had been apparently used to slash his head from his torso. Neighbors reported that Ingalls had been behaving oddly, as if he was frightened of something. No one knows who made the snowman. They tell you to stay with the vehicle if you get stranded out on the prairie during a winter storm. So, did I stay with the car? Nope. I had been headed for home when the blizzard struck, and I wound up in the ditch, where my choices were stay in the car and freeze my butt off, or see if I could find somewhere to phone for a tow, or perhaps spend the night. I had cut across country taking a shortcut along some secondary roads, so I wasn't likely to encounter any traffic. Indeed, I hadn't seen another car for a good half hour. But I had passed some houses. A few miles back? They could provide shelter from the storm. And so I left the car and immediately thought about getting back in. Wow. But those houses were only a mile or so back. I could do it. Still, that wind. It wasn't really snowing or snowing all that hard. It was the wind. It swirled the falling snow and whipped up the snow that lay on the ground and drove it right into your face like 1,000 sharp, icy needles. But at least the wind didn't howl. It whispered. I hadn't trudged very far when I heard my name. Cody! Funny how the wind can make you hear things, I thought to myself. But there's no one around to be calling my name. Just the wind. But gee, I wish it would stop blowing. Not that I had a lot of time to think about it. I was too busy trying to stay on the road and not fall into the ditch myself as the snow began drifting like ghostly fingers across my path. The houses couldn't be more than a mile or two away. Only a half-hour walk under normal conditions. But in this? Still, I could do it. At least it wasn't that cold. Oh, but the wind, that infernal wind. Like I said, it was whispering. That is, it sounded like voices whispering low, whispering just out of the range of hearing. It was so faint, I couldn't make out the individual words, just the low, agonizing murmur of people gently talking. Yet somehow I fancied they were talking about me. Steady on, dude, I scolded myself. Don't get paranoid. Fool! I stopped dead in my tracks. I was positive I'd heard a voice calling me a fool. Was there someone else out here? Some other pedestrian? I took a look around, tried to scan all around me, but it was impossible to see anything in the driving, pelting snow. Perhaps it's my subconscious mind telling me to get back to the car, I thought ruefully. One thing's for sure, ain't nobody around here but me. Still, I should be able to make it to those houses. You should be able to. Heck, I had to. Shall we take him now? That stopped me for a second time. Not now. Let's play with him first. What the heck was going on? Was I hearing things? Or was this a symptom of hypothermia? I picked up the pace. I had to get to shelter. Fast. Run, Cody, run, I heard a voice whisper. And then another. You can run, but you can't hide. We see you. Look at him run. Scurrying, scuttling. He's not so tough now, the coward, the liar, the predator. If he freezes to death out here, will anyone care? I could hear all of this clearly, in spite of the sound of the wind, and the last remark was followed by laughter. Yeah, laughter. Mean, infernal laughter. The voices then proceeded to discuss, to list off every shameful act I had ever performed. Things that made me cringe in embarrassment. Things I wanted to forget. Worse yet, the voices were gloating. I began shouting at them, shouting at the whispering voices, shouting at the wind. Shut up, shut up, shut the hell up. Just shut up. But what was I shouting at? It was just me alone on the bald prairie, in the middle of a snowstorm. Still, it seemed to have worked, for the voices were silent. All I could hear now was the sound of my footsteps crunching in the snow, the sound of my labored breathing, and the sighing of the wind, almost gentle, almost like a whisper. A whisper. And then I heard a voice, loud and clear, say, "Get him! Get Cody! Now!" The wind suddenly whipped up into a gale, and the whispers were replaced by the howling of banshees, and I found myself enveloped in a swirling snow devil as icy fingers grabbed at my clothing and icy hands struck and pummeled my head and body. Something tripped me, and falling, I struck my head on something hard. The road, a rock, and then everything went black. I awoke in light, brilliant fluorescent light. I was lying in bed, obviously in hospital. A young nurse bustled into the room. "Ah, so you're awake," she bloomed cheerfully. "What happened to me?" I said, my voice little better than a croak. "You were found lying in a snowbank, more dead than alive," the nurse said gaily. "You're suffering from frostbite, and you've had a concussion, but you should make a full recovery and be out of here in a few days." I must have been hallucinating, I told myself. Weird how you can get disoriented in a storm. I was lucky, I guess. I guess I should have stayed with the car. Soon it was lights out, and I lay in semi-darkness, as the hall outside my room was still lit. The gentle murmur of the busy hospital soon had me on the edge of sleep. On the edge of sleep, when I heard voices just outside the open doorway. At first I couldn't make them out. They were mere whispers. Whispers? I was suddenly wide awake. I tried to sit up, to get out of bed, but I fell back in exhaustion. A frigid cold seemed to be seeping into the room, a blizzard-like cold that made my flesh crawl, and the voices outside suddenly became more distinct. "Wait till the nurse is down at the other end of the hall. Ha! He thought he could escape us. Fool! Now!" The room filled with the howling of a banshee wind, and once again, everything went black as the grave. The moral of the story? Caught in a snowstorm while out on the roads? Just stay in your car. Really, just stay in your car. And always carry an emergency kit in the wintertime. One cold, snowy day, a tramp was walking towards Brighton when he overtook a boy who was smoking a cigarette. The boy wore no overcoat and looked unspeakably fragile against the snow. "Are you on the road, governor?" the boy said huskily. "I think I am," the tramp said. "Oi! Then I'll come a bit of the way with you, if you don't walk too fast. It's lonesome walking this time of day." The tramp nodded, and the boy started limping along by his side. "I'm 18, he said. "I bet you thought I was younger." 15, I'd have said. "You'd have backed a loser. 18 last August, and I've been on the road 6 years. I ran away from home 5 times when I was a little un, and the police took me back each time. Very good to me, the police was. Now I haven't got a home to run away from." "Nor have I," the tramp said calmly. "Oh, I can see what you are," the boy panted. "You're a gentleman come down. It's harder for you than for me." The tramp glanced at the limping, feeble figure and lessened his pace. "I haven't been at it as long as you have," the tramp admitted. "No, I could tell that by the way you walk. You ain't got tired yet. Perhaps you expect something at the other end?" The tramp reflected a moment. "I'm always expecting things," he said bitterly. "You'll grow out of that," the boy commented. "It's warmer in London, but it's harder to come by grub." "Still, there's the chance of meeting someone who might help." "Country people are better," the boy interrupted. "Last night I took the lease of a barn for nothing, and slept with the cows. And this morning the farmer routed me out and gave me tea, a crust of bread, and this here cigarette, just 'cause I'm so little. Of course I score here, but in London, soup on the embankment at night, and the rest of the time coppers moving you on. I dropped by the roadside last night and slept where I fell. It's a wonder I didn't die," the tramp said. The boy looked at him sharply. "How do you know you didn't?" he said. I don't see it," the tramp said after a pause. "I tell you," the boy said hoarsely, "people like us can't get away from this sort of thing if we want to. Always hungry and thirsty and dog-tired and walking all the while. And yet, if anyone offers me a nice home and work, my stomach feels sick. Do I look strong? I know I'm little for my age, but I've been knocking about like this for 6 years. And do you think I'm not dead? I was drowned bathing at Margate, and once I was killed with a spike. Another tramp knocked my head in with it. And yet I'm walking along here now, walking to London to walk away from it again, because I can't help it. Dead. I tell you we can't get away if we want to." The boy broke off in a fit of coughing, and the tramp paused while he recovered. "You'd better borrow my coat for a bit," he said. "Your cough's pretty bad." "You go to hell," the boy said fiercely, puffing at his cigarette. "I'm all right. I was telling you about the road. You haven't got down to it yet, but you'll find out presently. We're all dead, all of us who are on it, and we're all tired. Yet somehow we can't leave it. There's nice smells in the summer, dust and hay and the wind smacking your face on a hot day. And it's nice waking up in the wet grass on a fine morning. I don't know. I don't know." He lurched forward suddenly, and the tramp caught him in his arms. "I'm sick," the boy whispered. "Sick." The tramp looked up and down the road, but he could see no houses or any sign of help. Yet even as he supported the boy in the middle of the road, a motor car suddenly flashed in the middle distance and came smoothly through the snow. "What's the trouble?" said the driver quietly as he pulled up. "I'm a doctor." He looked at the boy keenly and listened to his strained breathing. "Pneumonia," he commented. "I'll give him a lift to the infirmary, and you too, if you like." The tramp thought of the workhouse and shook his head. "I'd rather walk," he said. The boy winked faintly as they lifted him into the car. "I'll meet you beyond Reigate," he murmured to the tramp. "You'll see." And the car vanished along the white road. All the morning the tramp splashed through the melting snow, but at midday he got some bread at a cottage door and crept into a lonely barn to eat it. It was warm in there, and after his meal he fell asleep among the hay. It was dark when he woke and started trudging once more along the slushy roads. 2 miles beyond Reigate, a fragile figure, slipped out of the darkness to meet him. "On the road, governor," said a husky voice. "Then I'll come a bit of the way with you, if you don't walk too fast. It's lonesome walking this time of day." But the pneumonia!" cried the tramp aghast. Said the boy, "Oh, I died." If this is your first visit to my channel, please consider subscribing. My name is Warren, and I write and tell original ghost stories and original horror stories featuring such cryptids as the Night Floaters, werewolves, and the Black-Eyed Children. So again, please consider subscribing. Please help me to reach my goal of 2,500 subs in 2022. Till midnight. Cheers. Pictures used in today's video, courtesy of Pix Here, that's PX Here, while the music was the intoxicating Ghost Story by that patron of the internet, Kevin MacLeod. The text of today's story, from The Ghost Ship by Richard Middleton, is courtesy of Project Gutenberg. Link in description. Thank you for listening.